How's it going, everybody? So in this video, we're going to be talking about how to actually create a successful transformation in your body composition that's actually sustainable over the long term. And it's something that takes a lot of effort, mostly in the first 6 months or so. But after you start to see progress and you start to get into the habit of the lifestyle, especially with methods that are actually effective, over the long term, you will find it easier and easier to sustain. Okay, so when it comes to body fat loss, a lot of people, mostly less experienced trainers, less experienced people who just have not been in the game for a long enough time to understand this, or people who don't study exercise science and things like this, or nutrition science, tend to think more and more cardio is the key, and basically eating salads and starving yourself is the way to a successful fat loss journey. And the fact is, you can lose a lot of weight in a short amount of time if all you do is exercise more and eat less, or just do a lot of cardio and starve yourself. But the problem is, number one, that's not healthy. Number two, even if you're motivated to do so, it can cause a lot of health problems over the long term and in the short term. But the main thing is that after you lose the weight, in order to maintain that weight loss, you have to maintain the starvation diet and the excessive amounts of exercise that got you there in the first place. It's important for people to know that creating a energy deficit, what a lot of people say a calorie deficit or whatever, is really just a deficit in the amount of ATP and energy that you are taking in compared to the amount that you're expending. It's really just matching up your energy intake to your energy expenditure is what it is. And at the beginning, when you have a lot of body fat to lose, all of that energy, you have all this stored energy. That's what body fat is. Body fat is just stored energy. And so we want to, at the beginning, create a deficit in your diet of energy coming in so your body can start to eat up that energy that's stored on your body as body fat. Okay? But once you get to your ideal body weight, it's a matter of matching your dietary energy coming in to the amount that you're expending, which really means you can eat a little bit more calories, obviously. And calories is kind of like not as clear of a term as people might think. But anyway, so the big thing here is lifting weights, gaining strength on key compound exercises for functional movement patterns, okay, is vitally important. The only people who say otherwise are people who don't have experience training all sorts of people and sustaining their progress over the long term, or people who have not had an actual change in body weight or body composition that they've been able to sustain. Okay, because sustaining a successful weight loss transformation involves, number one, gaining enough muscle to be able to burn more calories at rest. And number two, learning how to, for one, a understanding of nutrition that supports a healthy relationship with food. Because most people, when they start out, they don't have a healthy relationship with food. Okay, a lot of people think healthy relationship with food means that they can eat whatever and whatever they want and whatever quantities they want and snack throughout the day and feel good about it. That's not a healthy relationship with food at all. It's more so understanding what the purpose of food is and being able to find ways of integrating that healthy understanding of nourishing your body into your lifestyle in a way that does not prevent you from also enjoying your life. Because that's the number one problem people have at first, is that they're scared that going to the gym is going to be this giant inconvenient thing that interferes with their lifestyle. They can't find time and this and that. And then they think the nutrition aspect of things, like how are they going to go out and eat at family gatherings and holidays and stuff like that. And so it's very important to find a paradigm, a protocol of nutrition that works and is effective for fat loss and muscle gain and things like that. But you can also go to family gatherings as well. And so what I'm going to lay out for you all is definitely that, okay? I have had clients who loved going to Wendy's with their coworkers and stuff like that, or, McDonald's or whatever. And, it was like a ritual to them. And using my nutrition protocols, my just like guidelines, they're able to do that with their coworkers and not look like the odd man out, really, but still be able to make progress, and going out with the coworkers and eating with them did not interfere. So anyway, over the long term, muscle gain is the number one most important thing for sustaining a fat loss transformation. That's controversial, especially for females, because there is a stigma against gaining muscle and strength for females, because for one, it's kind of like a cultural belief that men are supposed to be muscular and masculine, and that muscles are masculine and this and that. But that's really not true. That's really a figment of society's kind of programming and gender roles and stuff like that. And it really holds women back, and it creates unhealthy relationships with food, unhealthy habits towards what's actually healthy for longevity and for health outcomes. And even further is that, obviously beauty is subjective, but the fact is females do not just gain, Hercules looking amounts of muscle and look like these jacked bodybuilders on steroids. Like for even for men, gaining enough muscle to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or some kind of monster bodybuilder, gaining noticeable muscle on a man is extremely challenging, okay? In order to even look like you lift weights for men, it usually takes, over a year of training with good genetics. So I'm just saying that even for a man with a high levels of testosterone, looking really jacked takes a lot of work, and it takes a long time. So for females, like being scared of gaining muscle and thinking, oh no, I just want to tone up, I just want to lose weight and this and that, and I'm just going to do cardio, it's usually because of a fear of like looking like a giant bodybuilder. But even men who are even on TRT a lot of times, they don't look like that. So that's because gaining muscle, you can gain like 5 pounds of muscle on your body is not the most noticeable thing. You're not going to look like Hercules, okay? It takes quite a lot of muscle development and experience in the weight room before you even look that way. Unless, of course, you're really, really trying to get jacked, okay? But anyway, so let's begin with the protocol. So gaining muscle is very, very important because it burns more calories at rest. Over the long term, you're going to look slimmer. You're going to be able to eat more calories, eat more carbs, eat more fats, and you're going to be able to tolerate more cheat meals and cheat days and outings with your friends. And if you eat a little bit of cake or whatever, as long as you don't go too overboard, it's not going to have a huge impact. Versus someone who doesn't have a lot of muscle, if they eat a pizza a week, it's going to show, and it's going to show really fast. The whole idea of being skinny fat, which is a term used pretty commonly these days, skinny fat is really just a man who has not filled out his, or not a man, but just a human who has not filled out their frame, and they have a very unhealthy amount of low muscle on their frame to where any amount of fat just kind of stores in their abdomen. The number one way of reversing the skinny fat body is by lifting weights, getting stronger, and eating enough protein to where that muscle fills out the frame, and now that fat is basically, you can think of it as being partitioned to the muscle, even though it's not necessarily what's happening mechanistically. All right, so let's talk about training for fat loss. So training for fat loss, it definitely should involve, at the very least, like a chest press, a shoulder press, a horizontal row, maybe a bent over row or a seated row, a vertical pull, which could be a lat pull down, it can be a pull up of some kind, as well as a squat and a hinge. So like a deadlift and a squat. Or, hip hinges are, like hip extensions and glute bridges are cool, but you need like a Romanian deadlift or something like that. Whether you do it with machines, dumbbells, it doesn't matter so much for hypertrophy and fat loss. But what matters is that you train all the major muscle groups and movement patterns, and you do so in a rep range with enough weight to where you can get about maybe 2 to 4 reps shy of failure. And the newer that you are to weight training, the less intensely you need to train. And really, the less volume you need to train. So it's not ideal to only train once a week, but if you do train once a week as a beginner, because that stimulus is so new, it actually makes such a higher impact on your body's tendency to change and adapt and improve and in the short term. And so as you over the years, after maybe the first year, it's more important to add another session and the longer that you train, the more closer to failure you need to get. But when you first start out, even the smallest bit of training is going to make the biggest amount of difference. The same thing goes with your diet. The small things matter, like removing sodas, exchanging the white rice for the brown rice, because those things regulate your appetite and you're less likely to overeat them, in addition to other things as well. So the smaller things matter at first. So just enough training that you can sustain is very important. But it's important that you make sure you get all the major muscle groups, no matter what. Smith machine, regular, hammer strength type machines, or dumbbells or barbells, whatever. And body weight is actually not the best thing for beginners, because imagine you're trying to do a push-up and you weigh 200 pounds, but you're not really strong. You haven't really done done weightlifting or anything like that. You're doing a push-up and you're pushing 200 pounds. Like, you could be lucky if you even get one push-up if you've never done them before. That's too much weight for you. Like, again, like trainers who are not very experienced, they make the mistake of thinking that body weight is like the best for all beginners. But in reality, lifting a dumbbell, like 10 pounds, 15 pounds, 20 pounds, makes a whole lot more sense than like trying to lift your whole body weight, 200 pounds worth, in a push-up or even a squat. In regards to squat, if you have trouble even squatting your own body weight, it might be better to do a leg press with less weight, obviously. And it all depends on where you're at, obviously. And different movements are going to be different for different people, and different goals as well. But yeah. So anyway, so you want to the parameters for your training. You want to be training most likely in the higher rep ranges if your goal is to lose body fat and especially gaining muscle. And you should be trying to gain muscle if your goal is body fat. It's to lose body fat. So you want to be training probably at the minimum 8 reps. So I would say anywhere from 3 to 5 sets per exercise, 3 to 5 sets. And training in the 8 to upwards of 25 rep range, okay? And you want to be getting close enough to failure to where you feel a burn and it is pretty challenging towards the end. So I would say around 2 to 4 reps shy of failure. And when you're new, you don't really know where failure is. So it might actually be beneficial if you're new to take maybe 1 set to failure, your very, very last set, for each exercise as long as it is not a dangerous exercise. Like Smith machine squats, that actually, or even like bench presses, especially on a Smith machine, are very, very dangerous because I've seen there's videos of people dying on Smith machines where they go to failure or they just lift too much weight because it just comes down on you, and the barbell is like fixed and locked in there and it can't just roll off. It'll just completely guillotine you. So very, very disturbing, but it's important because it's a reality. Smith machines are not in any way, shape, or form safer than like barbells. Quite the contrary, actually. Again, comes down to experience, and that's something you do not want to have experience with, dying in the Smith machine. So, yeah, where was I? Yeah, so preferably, as I said, 8 to like 25 reps, but preferably more so around 8 to 15 reps, probably a good range, and especially for your first set or your first couple sets. But especially if you're new, if you're trying to lose body fat and gain muscle, which you can do at the same time, your first sets can be a little bit heavier, and you can get close to failure in the 8 to 15 rep range. And then after that, you can lower the weight a little bit, and you can do sets of 15 to 25. So for the purpose of fat loss and muscle gain as well, but especially with fat loss, it is okay to switch up the rep ranges, okay? Because if your goal is not, performance oriented, like you're not trying to train for strength primarily, and you're not trying to train for endurance, because you will get muscular endurance and strength training this way anyway. But if you're not trying to, focus on strength or performance or endurance, you will it'll be very fine, like perfectly fine for you to change the rep ranges through your training, because more reps, more volume will equal more muscle growth and fat loss, provided you can recover from it. So doing supersets, lower rest time, stuff like that is perfectly fine. Doing supersets, doing circuits and stuff like that, I would recommend maybe not doing circuits, especially if you're new. I would recommend staying with the same exercise or antagonist supersets. You could look that up. Those are good too, especially if you're lower on time. But doing less rest is really, really good if your goal is to lose body fat. But just know that you're not going to be able to get as much out of each set. And so for muscle gain, strength, performance increase, it might not be the best thing. But for fat loss, especially if you're lower on time, shorter rest periods, doing cluster sets, supersets, stuff like that, perfectly fine, and actually might improve your ability to actually lose body fat. So this is actually something that I got from the guys at Renaissance Periodization, actually, Dr. Mike Israetel. So beyond that, doing tempo work is good. So instead of just pumping out reps, without a controlled eccentric, I like to count the eccentric on the way down for fat loss and muscle gain clients. So a controlled but fast concentric. So on a chest press, a concentric would be pushing forward, pretty explosively, but in a controlled motion. And then 3 to 5 seconds on the way down. So let's do 4 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and then a 3-second pause. 3, 2, 1, and then push. And that's going to really improve your heart's ability to pump out blood to the muscle. So you're getting an elevated heart rate, which means a cardiovascular stimulus, higher caloric burn. And you're also really concentrating on the muscle. You're lowering your risk of injury substantially because it's a controlled eccentric, and you're definitely stimulating that muscle and the mind-muscle connection, and you're probably going to be losing more body fat as a direct result of the heart pumping. Caloric burn and energy burn is going to be higher, especially in the higher rep ranges, especially with shorter rest times, especially if you're rotating and doing antagonist supersets where you do a chest press followed by a horizontal row. That's a really good way to get a lot of work in a short amount of time and burn a lot of energy, which translates to greater body fat burn and muscle gain. Now, is how many exercises you do is going to depend on a variety of factors, but in general, you don't have to be too fancy. One exercise for a vertical pull, one exercise for a horizontal pull, one exercise for a vertical push, one exercise for a horizontal push, one exercise for a squat, one exercise for a hinge, and again, 3 to 5 sets of anywhere from 8 to 25 reps. You can mix the reps up if you'd like. And if you don't feel like you got enough training, maybe a upper-lower split or a push-pull leg split, you can train once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, however many you think is ideal. What I think is most, if you're really, really serious and you're willing to commit to it, I think doing a upper-lower split, where you train upper body one day, lower body the next, and just training 6 days a week. Okay, each you hit upper 3 times and you hit lower 3 times. You have 1 day of total rest, and that at first might seem easy, but then after the first week you'll probably be very, very sore. But then after the 3rd week, your body will adapt to it and you won't be sore anymore. And you can start to add more sets, more exercises, and get more complicated as you go along. Now, if you do the weight training properly, you will get a cardiovascular benefit. And the thing is, you won't want to do too much cardio because you'll be so sore and exhausted from your weight training. And hopefully you've already got the elevated heart rate, the sweating going on, and all of that stuff, to where you already feel like you've got a cardiovascular benefit if you did the protocol right, and you don't really feel like you need too much extra cardio. And most people find cardio boring anyway, not to say it doesn't have benefit, but I would say the first 4 weeks of your training should be focused around the basic strength training exercises in the protocols, the reps and sets and the tempo ranges specifically for your goal of body fat and body fat loss. After the first 4 weeks, you can start to add a little bit of cardio, some walking on an incline or whatever it is you like to do, maybe a little high intensity interval training, some med ball circuits or something like that. I prefer high intensity interval training, but you can't do that too often because it's relatively intense, unless you become more adapted to it over time, obviously. But walking, choosing and also in your spare time, like when you're at work or whatever, just increasing the overall amount of movement that you get throughout the day is very important. You'd be surprised how parking at the very end of a grocery store parking lot and just increasing the amount that you're walking throughout the day, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, stuff like that makes a world of difference. Makes a world of difference. Because over the long term, day in and day out, that little bit of just coincidental activity throughout the day will stack up over time and really, really land people in a good place for sustainable weight loss. And remember, it's all about sustainability, and it's all about how can I implement these protocols to get the effects and the benefits for my goal without creating too much of like a hindrance where I have to go outside of my normal routine. The key is finding things that work and implementing them into your daily routine to where you don't even notice them. Because people who have a sit-down job all day will find it very, very hard, or a lot harder to lose body fat than someone who has a stand-up job or a walking around job or something like that. I can't even begin to tell you how many clients I've had that were waitresses, bartenders, or they're worked in a job where they're walking around hospitals all day, or even cashiers and stuff like that who are standing all day. They're doing good, losing all this, having an easy time, keeping the body fat off, but then they they switch over to a secretary job or something where they're sitting all the time, or a computer programming job, and now they suddenly start gaining weight out of nowhere. And it's like, well, what changed? Nothing changed. And in some cases, they're even eating less doing their sit-down job. But they are gaining fat all of a sudden. And it to me, at first, when I first started and I was less experienced, I didn't know what was going on. But then, obviously, over time, I was like, wow. Like, because I was like, nah, there's no way that extra calorie burn at your job makes that much of a difference. But it's like I kept seeing it over and over again. And also the greatest exercise scientists in the field that are also personal trainers have mentioned this as well. It's the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, also known as your NEAT, okay? It's a real phenomenon, makes a world of difference. Okay, so again, the amount of energy expenditure that you do at your job, a more active lifestyle overall, even though you don't think of it as exercise, makes a huge difference. This may also explain why certain areas of the world where there's less car driving and more walking in the culture, people typically are able to maintain like a leaner kind of body. All right, and this includes certain areas of Asia and Japan and stuff like that. Even the Mediterranean and Costa Rica and the list goes on and on. And maybe why elderly people who maintain something like gardening or something into old age tend to be healthier and stuff like that. So, so beyond that, let's talk about nutrition now more specifically. The first and most important thing for any body transformation or health transformation is eating the ideal amount of protein, okay? So the lower intake, the recommended daily intake of protein set by most government organizations, actually scratch that, set by the primary kind of RDA organization and authority is way too low, and we know this through food consumption data in Hanes, what people are actually eating. It's mostly protein deprived, high carb, high fat, junk food, hyperpalatable food. We know this has been verified through NHANES data and shopping studies where they actually look at what people are buying at the grocery store and then compare that to their health outcomes over time. Americans' caloric intake, the top 10 sources are, for the most part, in most age groups, coming from things like pizza, pasta, and stuff like that. And the number one protein source is dairy, mostly cheese, secondarily chicken. So it's not like people are going out there and eating steaks, eating eggs and stuff like that, or caring about the protein intake. People are actually mostly hitting the recommended daily intake of protein, which is around half of your body weight in grams of protein. It's actually a little bit under that, but yeah, half of your ideal body weight in protein, okay? So if your ideal body weight is 150 pounds, even though you might be overweight and 300 pounds, the RDI, which is stupid, the RDI just says like half your body weight in protein, basically. It's like something like 0.8 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, okay? It doesn't even specify lean mass or total body weight, okay? So for someone who's 300 pounds, that means 150 grams of protein set by the government. But if someone is 150 pounds, that means 70 grams of protein. It doesn't make sense for there to be that large of fluctuations, and that's just because the measurement is usually just total general body weight that these people use. If you go to a health expert and they say 1 gram per pound of body weight, and they don't specify lean mass or they don't specify ideal body weight, you need to not listen to that person. They don't know what they're talking about, because that means someone who's severely overweight and 400 pounds is going to need 200 grams of protein, but someone who's underweight, 120 pounds, might need 60 grams. That is complete nonsense. So, even to be healthy, let alone for a successful body weight transformation, ideal body weight, first of all. Whatever your ideal body weight is, that's the metric we need to use to measure grams of protein, okay? The second thing is so around 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. That's where we want to go. 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, okay, at the minimum. And if you're in a caloric deficit and you're under eating total energy intake, that becomes that daily minimum becomes even greater. So at that point, to offset catabolism of muscle mass, because now your body's going to preferentially create energy from body fat and secondarily from muscle tissue and amino acids from your muscle tissue breakdown, you're going to need even more protein. So it's very important. That's the first thing. With a higher protein intake actually burns more calories at rest. So the caloric burn, also known as the thermic effect of feeding from protein intake, is maybe 2 or 3 times higher than carbs and fats. So when you eat protein, your body actually burns more calories from metabolizing it. The second thing is higher protein intake means less hunger for snacks and other things, especially if it's coming from whole food protein sources. So that means greater satiety and lesser tendency to overeat. The third thing is it's directly supporting your lean mass, directly supporting your immune system, because amino acids are the precursor to glutathione and superoxide dismutase, which is your body's endogenous antioxidants. You're also getting your these amino acids convert to neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. So if you typically feel tired and lethargic and or depressed, and you aren't really paying attention to your protein, because most people think they're eating a lot when they really aren't, and your diet is mostly carbs and fats and snack foods, it's probably because you're not getting enough amino acid supply, and you're probably having all these like blood sugar spikes throughout the day that are really offsetting your focus and your mood and stuff like that. So not giving your body the building blocks for energy and mood and stress and sleep, and eating foods that directly send you all over the place with your energy levels and your mood. It's no wonder why so many people feel like crap in our society. So eating adequate protein is vitally important just for your general health. But then you also are directly supporting muscle tissue gain, and more muscle means more calories burned at rest, and supporting your endeavors in the gym and your recovery and things like that. So higher protein intake is the number one most important thing. So then after that, what you need to do is basically eat mostly whole foods. So on a day-to-day basis, it's okay if you cheat, maybe, so-called cheat, but, you eat something that's less than healthy, something that's not on your diet plan, maybe once a week, maybe 1 day a week even. I know a lot of people shun that, but if you splurge 1 day a week, it's not really going to have a huge negative impact if the rest of the week, 6 days a week, you eat almost exclusively whole foods, okay? Making sure you get the refined foods out of your diet and you just do your best to make most days a completely whole food, protein-centric diet is number one. So whole foods first and foremost, okay? And my recommendation would be, again, first of all, protein, especially whole animal protein. I recommend that. I don't recommend protein supplements, powders, and stuff like that. They're expensive. They don't have as much nutrition involved, and they don't have, and they don't really cure your hunger like some meat, some tuna, a steak, some even some beans, okay, because of the fiber content and the bloating and all the other stuff that beans cause will prevent you from wanting to kind of like overindulge in something like cakes or chips or something. So So that's the first thing. So the second thing is, so after the whole foods, that's the priority. The protein is the first priority. Whole foods is the second priority. The third thing is the type of foods that you're eating, okay? So if you're really dedicated to this, okay, if you're not dedicated, the first two things, the simple things, those are the ones you want to focus on. The more dedicated you are, the more strict you might want to be. You can focus on removing the excess energy intake that you don't really need, okay? And that means if you're going to eat carbohydrates, time them around your weight training or time them around your most active sessions, okay? If you have a long walk or you're going to be out on a trip at Las Vegas or whatever it might be, vacation, a little bit of extra carbs might actually be okay. Because you're out walking on a vacation and you're more active than usual. Or maybe you have like a really hard training routine on a certain day and you're training, you're doing like a really, really long leg marathon with your friend or something like that. Or you're doing a lot more cardio for that day. You could afford to eat a little bit more carbs and eat it, after that hard training session maybe. But otherwise, removing the excess energy you don't need. On days where you're not really training that hard, get your minimum intake of protein, 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, and then just remove the excess carbohydrates. Eat your fruits, eat your, whatever, but keep them to a minimum. And the second thing is opt for leaner proteins. So, leaner meat cuts, more specifically. I don't recommend just egg whites for health purposes. But if you're going to eat meat, which I hope you are, leaner cuts of meat, whether that's chicken breast, leaner steak, higher, leaner ground beef, whatever it is. The leaner it is, the less excess energy from the fats you're consuming and the less fat storage you're going to have. And then when it comes to carbohydrates, also added fats like butters and oils. They're really not necessary in your diet unless you're trying to increase your energy coming in, which could be more fat gain, depending on how you do things. So, yeah, if you can opt for cooking without oils, without butter, if you can eat your food without adding more oils and butter, then that would be a good idea. So removing the extra carbs instead of adding, syrup on your food, don't. Which I don't see why anyone would do that. Unless you're just trying to like make your food tastier. If you go out to eat, let's say you're eating a hamburger, maybe remove one bun or just remove the bun completely. If you have a serving of don't eat the fries. If you have the option between full sugar soda and diet soda, choose a diet soda or just choose the water, it's even better. If you're out, at a Mexican restaurant and they give you a serving of rice and chips, just don't eat the chips, man. Just don't eat the chips. Just say no. Tell them don't even bring the chips. That's what I do. Don't eat the tortillas or only eat one tortilla, only eat half a tortilla. Maybe don't eat the rice or only eat half rice. It's like however you do that, you can choose like eat one chip or eat just maybe 2 chips and just that. Learn yourself to be honest with yourself. If you're the type of person that if you only eat one chip, you have to keep eating, then just avoid the chip salt completely. So it's a matter of eating less of the things that contribute to the fat gain and moderating that over time. It's not about being perfect. It's not about being strict with your calorie intake and stuff like that. It's like, where am I going right now? Am I losing weight? Am I not losing weight? Am I, and then if I am losing weight, keep doing what I'm doing. If I'm not losing weight and I'm actually gaining weight, take a honest assessment at what are my tendencies with the chips and the tortillas and the carbohydrates and the butters and the oils and stuff like that. Eat a little bit less of the carbs and fats, okay? Protein intake, most likely doesn't even contribute to fat gain. Okay, let's put it that way. And I think I've made videos kind of touching on that. But scientifically, mechanistically, protein has not been shown to be a major contributor to fat gain. Okay, the excess, like your body storing energy from protein. Oh, that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down in another video. But yeah, so very, very simple stuff though. Whole foods first and foremost. Center on the protein. Try to limit your excess carbs and fats. Get most of your nutrition from whole animal protein foods, preferably. Lift weights, gain strength in the compound move, and in the main movements. Do a lot of reps, do a lot of sets. Make sure you're not training too hard for your current level of fitness. And do extra cardio in your day-to-day life. And make your days more active. And if you prefer to add a little bit of cardio on top of everything, go for it. The most important thing is enjoying yourself. When you start to see the numbers, like the improvements, the strength gain in your lifting, it's very motivating. It allows you to kind of sustain progress over time because you become addicted to the gym and the weightlifting, even if you didn't like that before. The nutrition program is easy because pretty much any restaurant you go to, you're going to be able to eat a little bit more protein. In fact, it's cheaper if you go to a hamburger place to just say, hey, I just want I want 3 burger patties a la carte. It's usually like $1.50 a patty. You can get 3 patties for only like less than $4. Compare that to a single patty burger with the bread and everything. It's like $5. So you save money. You're able to stay in your diet program by just ordering the protein, removing those carbs. And if you really are the type of person that needs a soda, diet soda. And if you really need your chips or your buns or whatever, just eat a little bit of the bun. Just eat a little bit of the fries. Moderation of the things that cause fat gain is the main thing. If you used to eat a supersized meal with fries and everything else and the sugar sodas throughout the day, just removing the sugar sodas or just cutting it down by half is going to make a huge difference. Switching from refined foods to whole foods, that's the most powerful change you can make. And emphasizing protein. If you're under eating protein before, doubling your protein intake is a huge game changer, and you will notice significant improvements if you do that. It's about looking at the small tweaks we can make, the 20% of methods that yield us 80% of results. That's what it's all about. So, So leave your question and comments down below. If there's something that you want me to touch on and clarify more, leave it down in the comments, and I'll talk to y'all next time.